Hey guys, it's Frank with Frank Talks, and this is
Jeff
with Frank Talks too. We're here today saying welcome to you. Glad you're with us today. I know, Jeff, we got a question from somebody at home, and we appreciate sending it along to us. You want to share it with us today?
Yeah, I do. I'm going to read it because if not, I won't remember it or I'll butcher it or something. So I'll read it off. And here's the question I've got. Frank, I'm going to give everyone a heads up here. It's kind of a two-part question.
Okay.
So I'm going to read through it real quick, and then we'll kind of dive into this, all right?
Love it.
Okay, so the question I've got a friend who was adopted. His mother was not married, became pregnant, placed him up for adoption. And long story short, it sounds like he was reading Deuteronomy 23:2 about children born out of wedlock, and because of this verse, he wants nothing to do with God. So I'm going to pause there. There's a second part. Maybe for folks watching, Frank, do you want to read Deuteronomy 23:2,
Yeah.
and that way we know what we're talking about here?
It says, if a person is illegitimate by birth, neither he nor his descendants for 10 generations may be admitted to the assembly of the Lord.
All right. So I can clearly see then why this person reading that verse is saying, hey, I probably don't want to have anything to do with that.
Yeah.
But I think we want to give it a little bit of context to this, right?
Absolutely.
So, we were talking earlier, and Frank, you've mentioned, I love how you pointed out that when we think of the Bible as one book, it's really 66 books, right? And in the book here, Deuteronomy, is part of the Torah, the law. And Moses was giving these instructions, this kind of covenant to the people. This happens in the Old Testament. So this is before Jesus arrived. So to give a little bit of context there, these instructions were given there, but this is before Jesus comes and establishes a new covenant. But maybe culturally, Frank, you can help us understand that from a lineage standpoint, from a family standpoint in society, boy, being in a family was really significant, right,
Yes.
at that time.
Incredibly significant, yes. And being a part of a family was the be-all, end-all of life, really. If you didn't have a family, if you didn't have a lineage, you were a castaway. And part of what is interesting about the law, as Moses gives it, is there's a spiritual component to it, and there's a practical component to it. And a lot of times, the practical and the spiritual kind of get mixed in together with one another. And this was just a practical thing because from the very beginning, God was really trying to create a unified people. And this was common in that day for pretty much all the world, the known world anyway, that you didn't intermarry. You didn't go outside of your tribe, so to speak, because they would bring things in that you didn't want in your tribe. If you married somebody from a different country or different place, man, that was anathema. It means it was castaway. You were thrown out onto the streets essentially because it would break your family tree. When it comes to the New Testament, part of what the New Testament writers did, the gospel writers, especially Matthew, when you begin in the New Testament with Matthew, it's got genealogy. And all that genealogy is there to say to people, hey, look, this is a legitimate person. Jesus came from all these other things, goes all the way back to David. It helps prove the viability of the line of Jesus. And that's part of what this question is about is, this appears on the surface. If I was born out of wedlock or I was born somewhere else, and let's say you were born and your birth mother put you in a basket and put you at a fire station, nobody knew who you were, nobody knew where you were from. In Moses' day, it would mean you were done. You were going to be a castaway. But we see it differently today because every person has a value all of its own. So it is kind of a two-parter, but part of what we're trying to say is to make sure that you understand that the context in which the Bible was written, especially this part in Deuteronomy, Moses was trying to protect the people, that to keep the purity of the people in the right place.
And later on in Deuteronomy 2, Moses is talking about how we're not going to keep that covenant, right? He knows we're going to break it. God knows we're going to break the covenant. So that covenant that we're talking about, again, I just want to illustrate that kind of standard, if you will. We don't meet that standard anyways. That's why God establishes the new covenant through Jesus Christ.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, one of the things Jesus tells in the New Testament again and again is you've heard it said, don't kill, you don't steal. So he's reminding them of the law, but Jesus says the summary of the law is love God, love your neighbor as yourself, which is amazing and awesome.
Oh,
but the other thing that we wanted to mention and touch on was that part of the beauty of having a relationship with Jesus is that nobody is outside of the family. In fact, Jesus said in John 14, he says, I call you, I have adopted you, I will not leave you as orphans. You know, you could be from, you might not have any idea what your family heritage is, but when you accept Jesus Christ, you are no longer an orphan, if you will, because you've been adopted into the family. I'm a part of the family of God. You're a part of the family of God because we have Jesus in our hearts and lives. Paul even goes a little bit further. In Romans 8, verse 15, he says, "So you have not received a spirit that makes you fearful slaves." You've not received a spirit that's making you feel for slaves. Instead, you've received God's Spirit, and that means that you've been adopted. You are adopted as His own children, and we call Him Abba. And that word, the biblical word Abba, means daddy. You know, it doesn't matter where you're from or what your background is, you are a child of God if you accept Jesus Christ in, because God loves all people, wants everybody to be in the family.
Well, Frank, thank you so much. I think that was a good question, but I remember saying there's a second part of this question.
Yes, absolutely.
So I want to go ahead and make sure we answer that as well. So really the second part of this is that the viewer was referencing, you know, you'd given some other examples of verses in the New Testament, and the viewer was saying, which is right? That example that we see in Deuteronomy 23, or the talk about being God in God's family, some of the examples that we see in the New Testament, which is right, which is wrong. And it's not really that it's one's right and what's wrong. It's we've got to understand the context, right?
Yes, yeah, because they're both right. I mean, in the context in which Moses spoke, that was correct. God had given them direction to keep the purity of the community, which was common for everybody, like we said already. So that was correct for that day, but it's not correct for this day. There's a new covenant. The new covenant comes from Jesus, and as we've said already, if you are a follower of Jesus, you're adopted into the family. You don't have to feel like you're an orphan or you're illegitimate, because you are not illegitimate. God sees you as beautiful and whole and perfect. That's the way God sees us. Can you imagine that? You're perfect, Jeff,
Yeah.
right? You're perfect. And what a great gift God gives to us in that. Thanks for jumping in with us.